everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to run through some of my top tips when you're going through a dieting phase with your nutrition. So we're going to run through 5 tips that I kind of recommend you to do when you are going through your fat loss phase. Things that may help, benefit you in terms of satiety, feeling full, and ultimately just being smart around food choices and things like that. Because again, I think we've often this day and age, we tend to go way too much one side or the other end when it comes to nutrition, in hope to promote a little bit of flexibility, or a bit too much flexibility, should I say. But when you are going through a fat loss phase, especially as a female, and more so as a small female, there's certain considerations that you need to be taking as calories do start to get lower and you start to go into a deficit. So I hope you enjoy, I hope it helps, and as always, any comments or any questions, please pop it in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to help. So tip number 1 in terms of helping you with fat loss with your nutrition is creating a sensible calorie deficit. Now, it is very common and very easy to fall into the trap of thinking, because as we all know, the bigger the deficit, the quicker fat loss will occur. But we know human behaviour isn't that simple. Human behaviour isn't a maths equation. We've got to include what we do on a day-to-day basis and think about emotions, human behaviour, all these different types of things that massively affect what we kind of do on a day-to-day basis. Now, the actual size of the deficit is relative to the person. And I would always advise, when you're starting off your health and fitness journey, you're starting off your fat loss phase, especially if you're newer to health and fitness, just creating a moderate deficit. So let's just say your maintenance calories, may be 2,000 calories a day. For you to maintain where you're currently at on a day-to-day basis, you need to consume 2,000 calories, and it might just be a moderate step target of, say, you do 10k steps a day and you're training 3 times a week. In terms of that's your maintenance. So if you want to lose body fat, a moderate calorie deficit would simply to be put you in, maybe 300-400 calorie deficit from that 2,000. So you might drop down to, say, 1,700 calories a day, and that may be your moderate deficit start point. If you was to try and speed up the fat loss process and do what a lot of people tend to do, a big common mistake, massively slash the calories, I can almost guarantee you probably won't be able to adhere to that for longer than a couple of weeks. I'd probably say a couple of days, and then you're back at square one, if not in a worse position. Start off small, start off in a moderate deficit, and then work from there. Over time, as things start to kind of plateau and things start to slow down a little bit, then you can kind of make changes, going forward. But initially, when you're starting off your fat loss phase, when creating the deficit initially via your nutrition and or your expenditure, I would initially start off by putting you in a moderate calorie deficit, which may be 300 to 400 calories, just as a sensible start point. Another tip, so tip number 2, is spending a lot of time educating yourself about nutrition. Now, I know this may seem like, oh, you're just telling me to go and learn, I've not got time to do that, but trust me, the clients and the people who I know who get the best results in terms of fat loss, they know why they're doing things, and everything's backed up with a rationale as to why they're doing it. So, for example, little tips like when it comes to understanding calories and macros, like what are calories, what are macros, what foods contain X amount of calories, what foods contain, Y amount of calories, whatever it may be. You need to understand, what you're actually doing. So for example, understanding that maybe opting for an extra 15 grams of peanut butter may not be as satiating as having the same amount of calories but with using potato. Whatever it may be, understanding that carbs have 4 calories per gram, fats have 9 calories per gram, protein has 4 calories per gram. Understanding you want to be getting plenty of fibre in your diet, because fibre is what's going to help fill you up. Understanding, protein is the building blocks for recovery. And equally, it's super satiating when you're going through a fat loss phase, so you want to be having a high protein diet. So getting this knowledge base and understanding the reasons why you may be asked to do certain things or why we recommend you to do certain things is very, very important when kind of building on that result. And anyone can kind of be given a plan and then execute it and then get to where they need to be. But for me, if you understand why you're actually being told to do something, that's the difference between someone who can get a result and someone who can sustain a result long term. So the education point for me is super, super important, and that's why I place such a big emphasis on that with clients. So really, really important. If you are starting your fat loss journey, definitely my biggest tip would be, or one of my biggest tips should I say, go and spend time learning about nutrition, learning about calories in foods, learning about, you know, why you may want to opt for such a food rather than such a food, you know, spending time investing, learning into a bit of, you know, knowledge around nutrition is pivotal, not just to achieve the result, but to understand that to sustain the result long term going forward. Tip number 3, this would simply be about eating less calories, not necessarily less food. Now, I spoke about this on my social media the other day quite a lot, and it got a lot of, you know, traction from people. You want to make sure that when you are dieting, you're not just eating like a small portion of food. It's about eating less calories, but keeping the food volume there. You know, naturally, human psychology will always take over when you're going through a fat loss phase. If you're used to, when you're not dieting, having a relatively, you know, decent sized plate, but when you're going through a fat loss phase, you may think to yourself, you know what, I'm just going to have cut half the amount of food out and I'm just going to stick to that. Well, you're obviously naturally going to look at that plate of food and going to be like, oh my god, I'm going to be really, really hungry. So naturally signalling to your brain, you're going to feel hungry even though you've not even touched the food, you know, eating it yet. So it's really important that we think about calories and not just cutting food volume. Food volume is key to feeling full and satiated, which feeling full and satiated is a byproduct then of adherence. You know, if you're feeling full, you're going to adhere. If you're going to adhere, you're going to get fat loss. So it's really important we cut calories, not necessarily food. Now, little swaps when it comes to this, and I'll pop this on the screen above. Little swaps, let's just say you have full-fat Greek yogurt. You may then swap that, to say 0% fat-free Greek yogurt. Let's say you have 250 grams, so half the 500 gram tub of full-fat Greek yogurt, that might be like 350 calories. You then may swap that for 250 grams, so the same weight, but you might have 0% fat, so you're cutting the calories out, which may be literally around half the amount of calories. So it's still the same food volume, but you're slashing the calories in half by making that simple swap. Same again in terms of, let's just say for your evening meal, usually you may have, I don't know, 200 grams of chicken breast, a full pack of rice and a portion of veggies. Simple little swap. Have your normal grams of chicken, so you might have 200 grams of chicken breast, have half a packet of rice and have some extra veggies. So you're slashing some calories from having the, you know, the extra half packet of rice, but you're having, you know, still keeping that food volume by filling that space with some extra veggies. These little swaps make a huge difference, and it doesn't seem a lot when we're talking about things, you know, singularly. But in the grand scheme of things, when you're making these, you know, little swaps across the day, they really do make a huge difference. So yeah, tip number 3, without a doubt, is making sure you are cutting your calories, not necessarily food volume. So I hope that one is very useful and hits home a little bit as well. Right guys, so tip number 4 is making sure you are not giving yourself too many choices. Now, I'm not about, you know, I am all about flexible dieting, I'm not about restriction, but equally we can often be a little bit too flexible, which can often cause paralysis by overanalysis. Now, what do I mean by this? If you are sat down and you give a child about 100 choices, they will have absolutely no clue what choice they're going to pick because there's so many choices to pick from. As adults, we're exactly the same. You know, if I was to give you 100 meals and be like, go and pick one, you'd be thinking, shit, there's a lot of choices here going on. Minimise decision fatigue. And decision fatigue often leads to doing nothing because you're thinking, oh my god, really, really confused, don't really know what's going on, so I'm going to pick nothing and I'm just going to go back to what I was doing previously and then go back to old habits. Set yourself a little target. So with nutrition, I always say this to clients, don't overcomplicate it. For each meal, come up with like 3 or 4 choices and then rotate between those. Not only is that going to stop with like tracking errors and things like that, it's also going to stop you thinking, you know, and again, save you money. When you go to the food shop, it's so easy. When you're on a meal plan, for example, you save loads of money because you're simply just eating the same things. Now, I'm not about a meal plan, but that's what I'm saying. Like, when you go to the supermarket and you're normally like tracking your calories and flexible dieting, it's so easy to end up spending way above the odds because you're like, oh, donuts, I can track them in. Let's just put them in my basket. Whereas if you was having a set structure, you know, you'd probably save a lot more money. So, you know, just to get kind of the balance of both, pick yourself like 4 meals and rotate between those. So like 4 breakfasts, 4 lunches, 4 dinners, and have a couple of snacks that you rotate between. Like I said, this kind of takes away the decision. So you're not thinking, oh, should I have this or should I have this? Really, really basic. Just pick a protein source, pick a carb source, pick a veg source, and then create the meal that way. A lot of people genuinely try to overcomplicate the meals. It doesn't need to be that, you know, it doesn't need to be that complicated. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know sausages and mash, that's my tea most now. It's because it's easy. Chuck the sausages in the air fryer, microwave pack of mash, I have half a pack of the microwave mash, boil some veggies, some gravy on top, and it just works for me. You know, it's always about ease. We live in a society whereby time is so precious. Everything's always 100 miles an hour. So my job as a coach with my clients is to make things as streamlined as possible. And the biggest tip I say to them, you don't have to overcomplicate everything. Stick to the basics, pick a few meals that you enjoy for each meal of the day, and then rotate between those. Trust me, this is one of the biggest foolproof methods to fast track your fat loss results, is simply pick a few meals and rotate them rather than thinking you need to reinvent the wheel every single day. Right, so tip number 5, and this is going to be my final tip, even though I could go on all day, is putting your food in advance. And now, putting your food into MyFitnessPal in advance, should I say. Now, this without a doubt is one of the most common mistakes that people make, and it's by far the easiest way to fast track your results. Now, why do I say this, put your food in advance? So, really commonly, we live in an obesogenic environment. If you just continue doing what you're doing and you continue with your average behaviours, you're going to get average results. It's really easy to overeat in the society in which we live in. So the biggest tip to actually progress with your fat loss journey is be proactive and put your food choices in advance. Let's just say you've set yourself a target of, 1,800 calories for your deficit, and you might be on 130 grams of protein. If you get to the end of every single day and you're always going over your calories, you're never anywhere near your protein, you're never going to get to that end result. So the biggest tip, put the food in advance. Have a look, you might get to the end of the day, you know, I always said, do it when you're lying in bed at night. Plan the day's food. You sat there, you've logged in, you've got to 2,000 calories, but you should be on 1,800, and you're on 100 grams of protein. Well, that tells you need to pull calories out from somewhere, and you need to up your protein somewhere. So that comes obviously manipulating your carbs, fats, and protein a little bit more. So that may be at breakfast where you're having 2 bacon medallions and a full bagel. You may swap that to having 4 bacon medallions and a bagel thin. Your evening meal, you might have logged in 100 grams of raw pasta with like 100 grams of chicken. You may swap that to having 40 grams of dry pasta and 200 grams of chicken breast, and making that swap a little bit more. You know, you might have logged 60 grams of oats, swap that for 30 grams of oats. You might have logged 30 grams of peanut butter, swap that for 10 grams of peanut butter. These little swaps make a big difference, but again, you have to do this proactively if you want to see fat loss results, because it takes time to understand, if I want to get a protein in, I need to do this. If I need to reduce my carb intake, I potentially need to do this, or consider making this swap in the supermarket. So proactive nutrition tracking is key to fast tracking your results. So I hope these tips helped. Nutrition is by far one of the biggest stumbling blocks that, you know, I speak to with people in my DMs, or I speak to with clients. It is pretty tough to get your head around nutrition, but when the penny does drop, it makes your life so much easier, and things just kind of go so much smoother when you're understanding why you're making certain decisions, or how to make certain decisions that align better with your goal. It is pretty tough, but like I said, it's all about education and kind of becoming invested in the journey. Nutrition is so pivotal when it comes to fat loss, so definitely put the work in, invest the time in learning, and it will 100% pay off when it comes to reaching your fat loss goal. As always, if you have any questions, pop it in the comments below. And anything that I can help you with, i.e. in terms of coaching, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe, and hope to catch you in the next one.